We can never really know how strong a believer's faith is until it is tested. And those in the Hall of Fame of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11 had their faith tested in some great ways. Good morning. I'm Pastor Ernie Lewis of the Blue Point Church in Sisney, Illinois, with your thoughts for Friday. Had not these great Bible characters undergone a hardship or a test of their faith, they would not have been proven and certainly would not have been listed among this group of heroes. In Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 17, it says, "By faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac. And he who had received the promise offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, 'In Isaac your seed shall be called,' concluding that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense." This was a tremendous test of Abraham's faith that was recorded back in Genesis chapter 22. His faith was already recorded as great when he left his homeland and traveled to a land that God would show him to give to his descendants in this area of Palestine. But now, God had to see if he would obey no matter what the cost. After Abraham and Sarah had had this son of promise in their old age, he now calls for Abraham to offer his only son Isaac on an altar atop the mountain in the land of Moriah. Now, there is no hesitation in Abraham's voice or even in his actions. He gathered up the wood and the fire. He took along his son, and they headed off for Mount Moriah to follow God's command. Even though God had told him that through Isaac his seed would be blessed, he was still willing to offer up his most prized possession he had to God. Now, we know the rest of the story, right? We know how God provided a ram in the thicket whenever they got there. He saw that Abraham was faithful and he was willing to offer up his only son, so he made another way for him. But Abraham had no way of knowing that when he went to sacrifice. And these verses remind us that Abraham had concluded that God could even raise Isaac up from the dead if he needed to in order to provide his seed. He says he received him from the dead in a figurative sense, since this was what he assumed would have to happen to get Isaac back alive again. Now, at a time when God had really not shown those kind of miracles as far as raising the dead, Abraham was still prepared to believe that he could do it. Does our faith today provide for the unseen or even the unheard when we trust in God? Very often we have some periods of doubt when faith seems simple for us to follow. That's how these became known as heroes of the faith. Not because they did some great task or feats of strength and wisdom, but because they placed a supernatural faith in a faithful God who is always true to his promises.